So my parents were born in Syria. My mother's Arabic and Greek. My father is Armenian. I'm the youngest of three. I was probably about 8 or 9 when it was actually my oldest sister, Maggie's boyfriend at the time, had approached my family, unbeknownst to me, and informed them, I think your son might be gay.
When did you realize yourself personally that you were gay or different?
I didn't know that I was different until a family member, specifically a cousin of mine, also a male, a year older than I was, came to visit from out of state. We were all just having a good time at the mall, and I was caught, quote unquote, caught by my older cousin looking at a funny card that had, a very buff, half naked man on the front, shirtless. And his reaction to me was, "What are you doing? Put that away. That's gross. You're not supposed to stare at that. That's a guy. Are you gay?" That was the
Hmm.
first time I heard that term. That was the first time I recognized and realized that I was different from my other male cousins, friends, things like that.
And then tell us how you were able to move forward with your life and how you were get connected with your Aunt Annie and other members of your family.
My Aunt Annie, yeah, lived in New Jersey. She was the youngest of seven of kids. My mother was the oldest. And to be able to keep connection with that side of the family, either they would send family out here to Arizona to visit us, or we would visit in the summertime for months at a time to be able to connect with our family and keep relations. All of my other aunts and uncles were born in Syria or out of the country. So they had a very Middle Eastern background, stern, stoic, not super fun. This aunt, on the other hand, my Aunt Annie, was Americanized. She was young and, she would take us to movies and pizza and things that the other aunts and uncles really wouldn't do. So a connection started with her when I was about 11 and I was in her wedding. The next year, my parents sent my sister and I, my middle sister, Sarah, and myself back out to New Jersey to visit family once again. And that's when I noticed things that just weren't right. She was very physically abusive with other family members, with people that she would just see on the street, especially her husband, punching, kicking, like scratching of the eyes, like just
Wow.
the whole family would brush it off as, oh, that's Annie. So that was like my first one-on-one introduction with my aunt.
Also, I think your culture also teaches total respect for your elders.
Yeah, you don't talk back. Somebody asks you to do something, especially if they're older than you just do it. You don't question, you don't lollygag, you get it done immediately. I was so timid and shy to see somebody so outspoken, boisterous, and nasty. There was a side of me that was intrigued because it was a total opposite of who I was. If somebody did something wrong to me, I would just take it, I would go off and cry, and I would never stand up for myself. She was a very intimidating woman, but at the same time, intrigued.
So, how did your situation with Annie continue on to where she got physical with you?
So I really enjoyed spending time with my male cousins when I was in New Jersey, especially my older male cousin Elias. I really looked up to him. He was very masculine and naturally built, everything I wasn't. I was very heavy as a child and, timid and shy, like I said. So we would all switch nights that we would stay at families' homes. And I was made fun of by my cousins a little bit because I was heavy and I was used to wear a shirt. They all slept in their boxers with the shirt off. That was my first introduction to my cousins sleeping at our aunt's house that night. It's let's all go to the living room, throw a blanket on the floor, open up the couch bed, watch a movie, fall asleep in the living room. I got made fun of for having my shirt on. The thing that really burnt a memory in my mind was the next morning we woke up and the first thing Annie did was she took the blanket and she threw it off of all of us. And okay, let's see everybody's morning wood. I had never heard that term before. I didn't know what that was. They all stood up. They two of the three showed their erection and then made fun of me for not showing mine. That continued every morning. We were there.
This would be her nephews to do this. Was that at your time thinking, this woman is not normal?
I went to a state where they all lived together. So for them, they knew each other very well. They grew up together. I didn't. I was born here actually, a month after my parents moved here. I was born from New Jersey. So I didn't know these cousins. I didn't know this aunt, other than when I would see them for a very short time when they would visit for a week or a weekend to Arizona. So for me to see this, I thought, okay, it feels very wrong. I'm definitely not, I don't even want to take my shirt off, let alone try and get an erection in front of my aunt and my cousins. But they're all having fun. And to them, this is a normal occurrence. Clearly, this has happened many times before. So, like I said, for me, it was a conundrum. I didn't know what to do. Growing up Middle Eastern, I love the culture, don't get me wrong, but we don't communicate. The loudest person in the room wins. Everybody else has to shut up, and kids are not allowed to have a voice.
So this escalated with Annie toward you and got to be molestation.
She would force me to sleep in her bed with her alone. My cousins, her husband, they were furious. And when it escalated to the point where she needed to shut us down, she became the loudest and most physical person in the room. There was like an extra layer of rage that evening, and it was the evening before I was supposed to go home. She made a physical example out of her husband. I she she grabbed his testicles in front of all of us through his shorts to show us that this is what was going to happen to us if we went up against her. And she was punching him. Now he would defend himself. He wouldn't punch back, and they were yelling. That was it. Didn't change anything. I was still forced to go in the room with her. Her bed was up against the wall in the corner, and so I was in the corner. So if I ever wanted to crawl out of bed, I had to crawl over her or crawl down the bed to get out. This night I just couldn't sleep. I forced myself to stay awake. I had my back turned against the wall. I can't explain it, but your body just kind of you just feel like you're a board, like you're a wooden board. She then started moving her hand on me, and this is the part I hate the most. I got an erection. And I jumped out of the bed and I ran into the bathroom. And I was hoping that if I was just loud enough to make it look like I wasn't trying to be loud and trying to get attention, but just loud enough to wake up her husband, that at least he could fight with her and wake up and see that something is going on. And her rule in that house was we were never allowed to shut the door when we were in the bathroom. So for me to shut that door behind me and lock it, I was mortified that she was going to hurt me when she opened that door. And I finally answered her, and I'm like, I'm just using the bathroom. I'll be right out. It happened again. This time I was loud when I shut the door, and her husband woke up. They were kicking, punching, they were on the floor wrestling, and my sister woke up. Everybody was yelling and arguing, and she called the airline. She extended my ticket for a week or 2 weeks longer and didn't extend my sister's ticket.
During that time, Tavi, did you know that she was extending it so she would do more harm to you? At that time when you were 12, did you think, oh my God, this is going to happen again?
My sister may have been only 3 years older than me, and she was also kind of timid and shy, but when it came to defending me, she was not quiet. And so to have that shield, that sword, that buffer zone fly home to the other side of the country, I was terrified. I basically waited by the phone. I calculated out how long it was going to take for my sister to get home so that I could call her. She's like, "Well, what's going on? Talk to me. What happened last night?" Because they don't know, they still don't know what happened in the room. I just said, "I don't want to talk about it. I just want to go home. I want to be gone when Annie gets home from work," because Annie was at work. My sister said, "Tav, I just don't want to tell you, but you can't. You just have to get out of that house. Call Teresa and go." She said, "Tav, do you know the chest that the scar that's on Sam's chest?" And I said, "Yes." I said, "You mean the one that he got from like walking, crawling under barbed wire?" She goes, "Yeah, that's not how he got it." She goes, "Annie stabbed him with a letter opener." My Aunt Teresa was the closest aunt to us. So I did. Called my Aunt Teresa. I'm trembling. I can't get any words out. Please pick me up. Please pick me up. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. That's just, I begged her. Please come get me. So my Aunt Teresa came and got me, took me to her house. About a half hour later, the doorbell rings and it's Annie.
Your Aunt Teresa didn't protect you. Even though she didn't know what was wrong, she didn't protect you when you were in that state. How did that make you feel when you were put back into this horrible situation again?
It was less of a feeling, more so a lesson that A, speaking up to an adult doesn't help. B, speaking up to an adult makes things worse. Because when I got home or to Annie's house, she immediately sat me down and told me the only reason why you are staying at my house and nobody else's is because your family knows that you are gay. They don't want you around any of their children, especially the boys. They don't want you turning their boys gay. The girls are disgusted by you. Your cousins, girls, and your aunts and uncles are disgusted by you. They don't want you around them or their children. I'm the only one that doesn't have kids. That's why they all told you to stay at my house. So don't ever ask to go anywhere else again. You are staying here until you go home. And she said, you are not to call anybody unless I give you permission. You are not to have communication with anybody unless I give you permission. Your aunts and uncles have told me they don't want you around their kids.
What a master mentally ill master manipulator. You were thrown back to a mentally ill molester who had no conscience.
Well, my cousin Elias called me a couple days later and he's like, hey, I heard you're still here. Why aren't you coming over? Here I am again in with a conundrum. I can't tell him that my aunt is trying to out me. So what do I tell this person to to convince him that I'm not staying at my aunt's house because I want to be here? He could tell. He could tell by my responses something was not right. He's like, Todd, why are you acting this way? Why are you being weird? Why aren't you coming over? I'm like, I finally just said, I would love to come over, but I don't think I'm allowed. I don't think your mom wants me there. They all came to the conclusion, clearly my Aunt Annie was trying to stop me from seeing them. So my Aunt Samia goes, okay, I'm coming to get you. You're coming over. And my Aunt Samia calls Annie only after I get there and says, listen, Tavo's here. He's fine. He wants to stay the night. Um, and we're good with it. We're happy to have him. Fast forward an hour, the doorbell rings. Who is it? Annie. I started screaming at the top of my lungs. I was like, I think I was even swearing, which I never did. I effing hate you. I never want to be around you. I am done being your sex toy. I wanted everybody in that house. I wanted the neighbors to hear me say that this woman was using me as her sex toy. I was like, I'm not your sex doll. I am not your sex toy. I never want to be alone with you again. And I ran. I run downstairs to where everybody's at. So I go down 2 flights of stairs and I just wanted to be where everybody else was. And my grandmother, come here, Tavo, come here. Calm down, quiet down, come here. And my grandmother was a very heavy set woman. And she pulls me close and she kind of like whispers in my ear and she goes, you know, you've disrespected your uncle in his home and you need to go apologize to him. I have seen get very physical with all of his kids. And I mean kicking, punching, throwing, breaking glass tables with his children's head, like this kind of physical. And now I just got done disrespecting him in his home, and I have to go apologize to him for standing up for myself for the first time. No sooner did I get to him, he grabbed me the same way my grandmother did, but he probably bruised my arms with how hard he was holding me. And he pulled me really close and he got up in my ear and he said, if you ever embarrass me in my house again, I will kill you with my bare hands. I started crying harder, and I went and I sat in the corner. I didn't want to leave the room. I didn't want to be somewhere where people weren't, where she could get to me, where Annie could get to me. I just sat in the corner and I cried. Nobody did anything. Nobody did anything. It's as if I wasn't there. And that night, guess where I ended back up? Back at Annie's house. So once again, Dan, I was taught, don't speak up. Nobody's going to help you.
You did eventually have a child. I know this is hard to talk about.
Fast forward to when I was about 16, and my father and I didn't have the greatest relationship. I love my dad. We just weren't a communicative family.
You didn't get any help from him either because he was distant from you. But was he aware what was going on with you?
I don't know if they were aware about anything that happened with Annie because we never spoke. I never spoke about it. And I don't know if they were aware of the fact that I was gay because I hid it. I think the only time they may have suspected was from the age of like 13 to 15. I had a best friend who was gay and very feminine. So that also kind of attracted me like, wow, I love that he's just standing in his own 2 feet without any fear. My father and my mother had a very tumultuous marriage, and they would split once a year, almost every summer, is what it felt like from the age of 7 until I was well into my teens, maybe even 19 or 20. I remember there was one year that I stood up for my mom. I was upset with him. My sisters kind of went along with the fact that he sent $100 check to the house a week after he left that said child support at the bottom, and then wanted to take us out for ice cream. And I was like, no. And he was screaming at me, screaming, how dare you disrespect me? You're not going to come. I can't believe you. You're not my son. And I was like, I'm the man of the house. I literally said to him, and I still can't believe I said this, but I said, we don't need you anymore. And by we, I meant my mom and I was trying to protect my mom. I think that moment shattered my relationship with my father. What little relationship I had with him. My parents are Middle Eastern, and they didn't believe in therapy and communication, and so that's where we didn't have a great relationship. And so when he moved back into the house, it was very awkward. And so at the age of 16, I moved out. I moved in with my a girlfriend of mine that I had known since seventh grade, and I moved in with her and her parents. She then went to Spain on to go abroad for high school, which is when her father came down on me hard because he didn't believe that I was gay, and he basically kicked me out of the house. So here I am with nowhere to go.
Was your mother understanding that this was going on as well?
I was and still am the type of person that like it's my problem. I have to fix it, and it's nobody else's to take on. I left the house, so I needed to pick up my own 2 feet. And when my best friend's parents kicked me out of the house, the only place I could turn to was my Aunt Annie's house, because she had moved here a few years prior. She basically just said, she's like, listen, I know you don't talk about it, but I know you're gay. We all know you're gay. It's fine. If you want to come and live with me, you can live a gay life. I'll even help you call your friend that you no longer talk to. My best friend who I didn't talk to anymore. His name was Brad. I mean, she pulled every rabbit out of her hat. You can be yourself.
Master manipulator, mentally ill master manipulator.
We did the whole everything she said. We called my best friend Brad. I got a hold of him. She was like listening to the conversation like a hawk. And it was almost like the minute I hung up that phone, she realized, like, yeah, this kid is definitely gay. And that's not okay. And that's not going to happen. I'm your aunt. And in God's eyes, if we do something sexual, it's not wrong, especially because I'm teaching you and I'm helping you wake up to the fact that you're not gay. So
Oh
we
God.
can do whatever we want to prove to yourself that you're not gay. I didn't say anything, but in my mind, I was like, hell no, I want you nowhere near me. That was not the plan. No, but what do I do? Where do I go? So, long story short, at the age of 17, she would come into my room at night, and I would be kind of like in a daze when she would come into my room. And I didn't want my uncle to wake up because I knew how that would go. They would fight, nothing would happen, and she would get worse with me the next day.
Not only was she a master manipulator, but she was using drugs to get what she wanted.
It turns out she was drugging everybody that she wanted to do things to with Benadryl. And so she would come into my room at night, and I just gave in to her, Dan. It was easier to let her do what she wanted to do than suffer the physical consequences after. On December 17th, I was 17 years old, and that was the night it went from fondling to penetration. It was very rare that we would talk about like emotions. But that next morning, I remember I told her, I said, I don't feel good about what happened. I don't like this. I don't want to continue. I literally told her I don't want to live anymore. Somebody told me that my sister Sarah, my middle sister, got into an accident the night before, and she was in the hospital, and the car was like totaled. And it was rare for me to get a phone call from family and friends because at this point I had been Annie didn't allow me to talk to anybody. So for me to get a phone call from a family member, I was like, whoa, what's going on? And so I hung up the phone and I cried. And I said, see, this is God punishing me for what I allowed to happen last night. My sister almost died. And it was like at the same time uh, as what was happening last night. No, 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 it's fine. It's fine. You're just being exaggerative. It's fine. And she was like so nonchalant, as if nothing had happened the night before. And once again, that became the new norm. She would come into my room at night and we would have intercourse. From what my sisters tell me, because they had looked at histories, Annie never had technology. She hated cell phones and computers. So whenever she would use a computer, it would be at a family member's house. And I remember one of my sisters approaching me and being like, I know that something is going on. You won't tell us. Mom is taking you to therapy. You won't even tell the therapist. Something is not right, and we all know it. And I just want you to know the last search that Annie did on my computer was menstrual cycle and how to get pregnant. Mind you, her husband had been begging her for a baby forever. And Annie's response was, my body is a temple. I'm never going to ruin it for you. I'm never going to have a baby. Well, Annie waited until I was 18 to get pregnant. And by 19, Dante was born. By 21, I realized that we were both in danger, not only from her sexual abuse, but her physical abuse. And that I wasn't going to be able to protect my son and get him out of the situation unless I got out of it myself first. My son is probably the reason why I am able to talk to you today, because I recognized at that point that I was the only one that was going to be able to protect him. And if I left this earth, he was done for. I was able to get away at 21. It took me about a year and a half after he was born. And about a year later, I started court proceedings because CPS didn't help, police department didn't help. Nobody helped. And the only thing that would help was hiring an attorney. What the courts asked me to provide to them, which was basically a synopsis of how the grooming process took place between Annie and myself. I don't know if my father's read it. I've never spoken to my father about it, but they know that my son is Annie's son, and but do they know how or what? I don't think so.
You're an incredible man of courage. You've been through more abuse than any person should have ever been through, not having family that supported you. Also realizing that your sister and cousin, and now your son was abused by her. Do you have peace and joy in your life today? And how were you able to get that peace and joy in your life?
It's a work in progress every day, Dan. Finally, I'm with a partner that makes me feel safe. The thing that I would have considered my deepest, darkest, I can talk about. I react in certain ways to people and things and in a way that somebody without a past like mine wouldn't react. And so, yeah, that's why I say it's a work in progress.
This should never have happened, but it did. And you've shown fortitude, you've shown strength, you've shown courage, you've had fear, and you've used courage to overcome it. You're a tremendous man. You're embracing the fear, you're getting therapy, and you're moving forward. Parents, aunts, and uncles that see stuff going on, don't avoid it when you see these things on. Don't avoid it. Do something about it. I just think that is powerful, that they need to hear that. My thoughts and prayers will always be with you, David, and thank you for sharing this. You take care.